Have you seen Nicki Minaj losing her mind?
Imagine waking up to see one of the biggest names in hip-hop accusing another legend of stealing hundreds of millions, controlling the industry, and hiding dark secrets, all in real time, online. That's exactly what happened when Nicki Minaj suddenly went nuclear on Jay-Z. What started as whispers about money turned into accusations so explosive that Roc Nation reportedly fired back with a multi-billion-dollar cease and desist. No diss track, no interview, just chaos.
Now, you've also said that Jay-Z, Foxy Brown, and Lil Wayne were some of your biggest influences when you were coming up. What did each of them have that you wanted to emulate?
Jay-Z, business savvy. Foxy Brown, immaculate delivery. Lil Wayne, trendsetter.
Nicki didn't stop there. She went from calling out the Grammys to attacking the Super Bowl to dragging politics into it, even flipping from years of anti-Trump statements to proudly calling herself his biggest supporter. Fans were confused, critics were shocked, and Jay-Z completely silent. So how did two artists who once shared stages, mutual respect, and industry admiration end up here? How did a business deal from years ago turn into one of the most disturbing and controversial feuds hip-hop has ever seen? And is Nicki exposing something real? Or is this the unraveling of a superstar under pressure?
Say this, every label passed up on me. Every record company passed up on me. Every crew, like I'm from New York. Jay's crew and 50's crew didn't sign me. I wasn't signed to Nas, and I wasn't signed to anybody,
To understand how this situation spiraled so far out of control, you have to rewind the clock. Back to when Nicki Minaj and Jay-Z were actually cool. Back in the early days, before the beef, before the accusations, before the internet meltdowns, Nicki Minaj and Jay-Z were actually on good terms. Not industry cool, not fake smiles at awards cool, but genuinely aligned in a way that made sense for where hip-hop was heading. Nicki was the rising force. Jay-Z was already the blueprint, and for a moment, it looked like their paths were moving in the same direction. In 2010, Nicki Minaj changed everything with one verse. Her performance on Kanye West's Monster didn't just steal the song, it shook the entire industry. Rappers, fans, critics, everybody was forced to acknowledge that something different had arrived. That verse put Nicki in a new category overnight. She wasn't just a feature artist anymore. She was a problem. And Jay-Z noticed. Not long after that breakout moment, Nicki found herself sharing some of the biggest stages in the world with Jay-Z. Massive concerts, major award shows, industry events where only the elite were invited. She performed at his home-and-home shows with Eminem at Yankee Stadium. She appeared with the Roc Nation Circle at the BET Awards. Visually, symbolically, it looked like a passing of the torch. New York royalty embracing the new queen. Nicki herself openly acknowledged Jay-Z as a major influence. She talked about studying his business moves, his mindset, the way he transitioned from rapper to mogul. She admired how he built an empire, how he played chess while everyone else played checkers. In her own words, Jay-Z represented business savvy, the model, the goal. But here's the part that rarely gets talked about. Before Nicki blew up, before Cash Money, before the world tours, every major label passed on her. Every single one. New York labels, New York crews, Jay-Z's camp, 50 Cent's camp, Nas' circle. Nobody signed her. Nobody invested. Nobody took the risk. Nicki has spoken about this herself, how she was right there in New York, surrounded by legends and still couldn't get a deal. She wasn't welcomed in by her city's gatekeepers. Instead, she had to leave New York entirely and find her opportunity in New Orleans with Lil Wayne and Cash Money. That experience stayed with her. Being overlooked by the very people she admired planted a seed that never fully went away. So even during the years when Nicki and Jay-Z appeared cool in public, there was already tension underneath. A quiet feeling of being underestimated, of being excluded, of having to earn everything the hard way while others controlled the doors. Fast forward to 2015, and everything shifted from music to money. Jay-Z launched Tidal, a streaming service positioned as a revolution. This wasn't supposed to be just another app. It was marketed as a movement. Artists owning their work, fair pay, independence from tech giants. At the launch event, Jay-Z stood shoulder to shoulder with the biggest names in the world: Beyoncé, Kanye West, Madonna, Daft Punk, Rihanna, and Nicki Minaj. Nicki wasn't just there for optics, she was presented as an artist partner. According to reports at the time, she held around a 3% equity stake in the company. That wasn't small, that was real ownership. And Nicki went all in. She promoted Tidal relentlessly. She pushed exclusives. She encouraged fans to subscribe. She did what a partner does. According to Nicki, she was one of the top promoters of the platform, second only to Beyoncé. And for years, she believed she was helping build something that would eventually pay off in a major way. But behind the scenes, things weren't adding up. Tidal struggled. Subscriber growth was slow. Competition from Spotify and Apple Music was brutal. The dream of a billion-dollar artist-owned platform started looking shaky. Then in 2021, Jay-Z sold Tidal to Square, Jack Dorsey's company, for around $300 million in stock, with reports suggesting Jay-Z himself walked away with roughly $32 million. That's when Nicki says the phone call came. According to her, she was offered around $1 million to settle everything. No breakdown, no detailed accounting, just a number. And the explanation she says she received was that Tidal didn't really make money, so there wasn't much to distribute. That didn't sit right with her. From Nicki's perspective, if she truly owned equity, if she truly helped build the platform, then the payout didn't make sense. A 3% stake in something that sold for hundreds of millions should have been far more than what she was allegedly offered. To her, it felt like a lowball. Worse than that, it felt like an attempt to quietly close the book and move on. She called it a scam. She suggested it was hush money. And for the first time, she publicly framed Jay-Z not as a mentor or business inspiration, but as someone who had done her dirty. Industry voices started chiming in. Some suggested her frustration made sense. Others argued that equity deals are complicated and not always what artists think they are. But one thing was clear. This wasn't about ego anymore. This was about money. And money changes relationships fast. As time went on, Nicki's number kept growing. First it was millions, then tens of millions. Then by mid-2025, she was talking about amounts as high as $100 to $200 million. She framed it as karmic debt. She said the money wasn't even just for her. She claimed she wanted to use part of it for charity, for her fans, for education. In her mind, this wasn't greed. This was justice. And then came the moment that turned a business dispute into all-out war. In September 2024, the NFL announced Kendrick Lamar as the headliner for the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show. The performance would be produced by Roc Nation, Jay-Z's company, and the Super Bowl was happening in New Orleans. For Nicki, this was unforgivable. She believed Lil Wayne deserved that stage. Wayne was her mentor, her foundation, a New Orleans legend. And in her eyes, the decision to exclude him wasn't about artistry. It was about politics, grudges, and power. She accused Jay-Z of punishing Wayne because of long-standing tensions with Cash Money, Birdman, Drake, and herself. She framed the Super Bowl decision as proof that Jay-Z controlled the culture and used that control to settle personal scores. At that point, the narrative shifted completely. This wasn't just Nicki versus Jay-Z. This was Nicki versus Roc Nation, versus the NFL, versus what she saw as a system designed to decide who gets elevated and who gets erased. And this was only the beginning. After the Super Bowl announcement, things spiraled fast. What started as frustration over business and respect turned into something much bigger, much louder, and far more public. Nicki Minaj wasn't just airing grievances anymore. She was declaring war on what she saw as an entire power structure, and Jay-Z was at the center of it. By early 2025, Nicki's online presence had completely shifted. Her posts weren't cryptic subtweets or vague frustrations. They were direct, aggressive, and relentless. She accused Roc Nation of blackballing artists. She claimed the industry was controlled by a small group of executives who decide who wins, who loses, and who gets erased. And in her view, Jay-Z wasn't just part of that system, he was the system. Around this time, a lawsuit involving Megan Thee Stallion and Roc Nation began making headlines. A former cameraman alleged discrimination and a hostile work environment. While the case itself had nothing to do with Nicki, she latched onto it immediately. To her, it was proof. Proof that Roc Nation wasn't the clean, progressive powerhouse it presented itself as. Proof that something darker was happening behind closed doors. Nicki mocked Megan publicly, revived old beef, and used the lawsuit as fuel to attack Roc Nation leadership, especially Desiree Perez. She brought up Perez's 2021 presidential pardon, framing it as evidence of corruption and political connections. In Nicki's narrative, this wasn't coincidence. This was power protecting itself. She went even further, accusing Roc Nation of using bots to manipulate online conversations, silence critics, and control public perception. She claimed artists who didn't fall in line were punished, ignored, or quietly pushed out of the spotlight. According to her, this wasn't just about music. This was about influence over culture itself. Hip-hop, sports, fashion, even politics. Then Nicki started naming names. She listed artist after artist who she claimed had issues with Jay-Z over the years. Nas, DMX, Jazzo, Tupac, LL Cool J, Dipset, Drake, Lil Wayne, Birdman, Bobby Shmurda, Future, Eve. She framed it as a pattern, not isolated incidents. To her supporters, it looked like someone finally saying what others were too scared to say. To critics, it looked like someone connecting dots that didn't necessarily belong together. In October 2025, Nicki shocked everyone by announcing she was canceling her planned 2026 album and possibly retiring from music altogether. She didn't blame burnout. She didn't blame the industry in general. She blamed Jay-Z directly. Her message was blunt. No more music. No more playing the game. Hope you're happy. Most people didn't believe it would stick. Artists threatened retirement all the time, but the symbolism mattered. Nicki was signaling that this fight meant more to her than charts, sales, or legacy. She was willing to burn it all down to make a point. Then came the Grammys, February 1st, 2026. Crypto.com Arena, Los Angeles. Trevor Noah hosting for what he announced would be his final time. During the opening monologue, he took shots at several absent celebrities, including Nicki Minaj. The joke referenced her recent political appearances and implied she was at the White House with Donald Trump. The crowd laughed. Cameras caught celebrities clapping. Chrissy Teigen gave a visible thumbs up. Nicki wasn't in the building, but she was watching. What followed on social media was immediate and explosive. Nicki accused the Grammys of mocking her, of celebrating her absence, of participating in what she described as humiliation rituals. She framed the awards show not as entertainment, but as something darker and symbolic. In her posts, she warned that those involved would face consequences, claiming that God would expose everything. She then turned her attention to Trevor Noah directly, making personal attacks that many viewed as homophobic and unnecessary. She also lashed out at Chrissy Teigen and Lizzo, dragging them into the chaos without provocation. At that point, even some longtime supporters started pulling back, questioning where this was going. But the most controversial moment was still ahead. Nicki began posting images of Jay-Z with Aaliyah, implying an inappropriate relationship and using language that suggested criminal behavior. She labeled him a predator. She went further, claiming that powerful figures in the industry were involved in ritualistic behavior, in child exploitation, as a way to gain and maintain power. These were not subtle implications. These were explicit accusations. The backlash was immediate. Journalists, fans, and fact-checkers quickly pointed out that the claims didn't align with documented timelines. Aaliyah was born in 1979, and any verified interactions between her and Jay-Z occurred when both were adults. The well-known underage abuse case involving Aaliyah was connected to R. Kelly, not Jay-Z. A photo Nicki shared of Beyoncé was revealed to be cropped and taken completely out of context. As the fact-checks spread, criticism intensified. Many people pointed out the contradiction between Nicki's accusations and her own personal associations, including her brother's conviction for child sexual assault and her husband's status as a registered sex offender. Social media users accused her of deflecting, projecting, and weaponizing serious allegations without evidence. Meanwhile, Jay-Z said nothing. No statement, no tweet, no interview. The only reported response from his side was a cease and desist letter threatening billions in defamation damages. Other than that, complete silence. To some, it looked like confidence. To others, avoidance. But strategically, it worked. While Nicki continued posting, Jay-Z remained untouched by the noise. As the industry debated her claims, Nicki's personal transformation became impossible to ignore. Her political shift stunned even longtime fans. For years, she had criticized Donald Trump openly. She spoke against his immigration policies. She dissed him in music. She condemned family separations at the border. But by late 2025, she had fully flipped. Nicki began appearing at conservative events like Turning Point USA's America Fest. She praised Trump publicly, calling him handsome and referring to herself as his #1 fan. She appeared at a White House event promoting Trump-backed initiatives and pledged significant financial support. She framed her shift not as contradiction, but as awakening. She spoke about being tired of being bullied, tired of industry pressure, tired of being told how to think. She framed Trump as someone protected by God and herself as finally standing in her truth. The reaction was brutal. Fans unfollowed her in droves. Videos surfaced of people destroying her merchandise. LGBTQ+ supporters, who had long been a core part of her fan base, felt betrayed as she reposted anti-trans content and echoed rhetoric they found harmful. Celebrities distanced themselves. Cardi B publicly criticized her. Billy Porter openly condemned her. Nicki dismissed it all. She said she didn't notice the backlash. She said she was joyful, focused, and unbothered. In her words, the people attacking her were angry with themselves. But by this point, the damage was done. By the time 2026 rolled around, the situation had gone far beyond a simple industry beef. This wasn't just Nicki Minaj versus Jay-Z anymore. It was Nicki versus the machine, versus the culture, versus the version of hip-hop she felt had shut her out after she helped build it. And whether people believed her or not, one thing was undeniable. She had everyone watching. As the backlash continued, more people started asking a different question. Not, is Nicki right? But what is actually driving this? Because behind the anger, behind the accusations, behind the political shift, there was a consistent theme running through everything she said. Control. Control over money, control over narratives, control over who gets elevated and who gets erased. Nicki repeatedly returned to the idea that she was promised something and denied it. Not just financially, but symbolically. She believed she earned a seat at the highest table and was never fully given one. In her mind, the Tidal deal wasn't just about a percentage. It was about respect. It was about trust. And when that trust broke, everything else unraveled. Industry insiders were split. Some quietly acknowledged that streaming-era equity deals were often unclear and that many artists didn't fully understand what they were signing. Others argued that Nicki's expectations didn't match the reality of the sale and that the numbers being thrown around online were exaggerated. But nobody denied that Tidal had been sold for far less than initially promised, or that several artists involved felt disappointed with how it all played out. At the same time, critics pointed out that Nicki's approach was hurting her credibility. Serious accusations require serious evidence, and by blending legitimate business grievances with conspiracy language, she made it easier for people to dismiss everything she said. Even those who believed she'd been wronged financially struggled to defend the way she framed her claims. Then there was the silence. Jay-Z's refusal to engage became one of the most talked about aspects of the entire situation. In an era where artists clapped back instantly, his absence was loud. Some saw it as arrogance. Others saw it as discipline. Either way, it shifted public perception. While Nicki flooded timelines with posts, Jay-Z continued moving quietly, attending events, running businesses, and letting his lawyers handle the rest. That contrast mattered. To many observers, it made Nicki look isolated, alone against an institution that didn't even acknowledge her. And isolation can do strange things to people, especially when they feel betrayed by an industry they gave everything to. As months passed, the conversation began shifting toward Nicki's legacy. Not just what she was saying now, but what people would remember later, because there was no denying her impact. She changed the sound of mainstream rap. She opened doors for women in a male-dominated genre. She broke records, influenced fashion, and built one of the most loyal fan bases in music history. But legacies are fragile. Some fans worried that these final chapters would overshadow the earlier ones, that future discussions about Nicki Minaj would focus less on her music and more on controversy. Others argued that history would eventually separate the art from the chaos, the same way it has for many artists before her. Nicki herself seemed aware of this tension. When asked directly about how she wanted to be remembered, she didn't talk about charts or awards. She talked about freedom, about changing your mind, about refusing to be controlled, about speaking even when it costs you everything. To her supporters, that was courage. To her critics, it was deflection. Meanwhile, the industry moved on. New artists rose, new controversies replaced old ones. But the questions Nicki raised didn't disappear. Who really owns the platforms artists promote? How transparent are equity deals? How much power do a few executives actually have over culture? And why does silence sometimes speak louder than outrage? There was also the uncomfortable reality that two things could be true at the same time. Nicki could have legitimate grievances and still handle them in a way that hurt her cause. Jay-Z could be a powerful industry figure and still not be responsible for every perceived slight. The truth, as always, likely lives somewhere in the middle. As of now, no court case has resolved the financial dispute publicly. No evidence has backed the most extreme accusations, and no reconciliation appears to be on the horizon. Jay-Z remains quiet. Nicki remains outspoken. The gap between them feels permanent. And maybe that's the real ending. Not a winner, not a loser. Just two icons who once stood side by side, now representing opposite philosophies of power. One believes influence is best exercised silently, behind the scenes. The other believes truth must be shouted, even if it burns everything down. So when people ask what really happened between Nicki Minaj and Jay-Z, the answer isn't simple. It's business, it's ego, it's hurt, it's politics, it's legacy. It's what happens when admiration turns into disappointment and disappointment turns into war. Whether Nicki is exposing real corruption or spiraling under pressure depends on who you ask. Whether Jay-Z is a master strategist or just refusing to engage is also up for interpretation. But one thing is certain, this story isn't just about them. It's about an industry built on power, perception, and silence. And as long as those things exist, stories like this will keep repeating. Now it's your turn. After hearing the full breakdown, what do you really think is going on here? Is Nicki Minaj exposing real industry power plays that most artists are too afraid to talk about? Or has years of pressure, business disputes, and public backlash pushed her into a spiral that's overshadowing her legacy? And what about Jay-Z? Is his silence proof of innocence? Or is it the smartest move a powerful figure can make? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, because this conversation isn't black and white. There's money, ego, loyalty, and control all wrapped into one story, and every angle matters. If you believe artists deserve transparency in business deals, say that. If you think accusations need receipts no matter who's making them, say that too. If you enjoyed this deep dive and want more breakdowns like this, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. We cover the stories behind the headlines, the industry moves nobody explains, and the drama that shapes hip-hop culture in real time. Check out the videos on screen for more content, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.